Okay. Thank you everyone for coming to this year's AS presidential and vice presidential debate. My name's Evelyn Jimenez, and I will be this year's moderator alongside our Assistant Chair of Elections, Reema Haque. And here today we are with two presidential candidates and their vice presidents, and all aiming to become the next Associated Students president and vice president. Our first slate is Matadors Leaning Forward, with their presidential candidate being Jonathan Haque and their vice president, Kaitlyn Orozco. Our second slate is Rise Above, and the presidential candidate is Jacob Akopnik, alongside his vice president, Kayla Simpkins. Now we're going to be jumping into the first part of our debate. This portion consists of several questions regarding AS and CSUN directed only towards the presidential candidates. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer the question. Once everyone has the answer to the original question, candidates will be given 1 minute for rebuttals, and everyone will have 30 seconds for a second rebuttal. Candidates will be given an additional 30 seconds for the rebuttal, and only presidential candidates can be rebuttaling during this portion of the debate. Now, candidates, if you are not speaking, please be muted, and if you would like to rebuttal, please raise your hand, and I will call on you. If you choose to not use the full time of any of these portions, you will not be able to use the leftover of the past portions. The order is all randomized, and if you need me to repeat any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. So now we're going to be moving on to the opening statements of our presidential candidates, and they will only be given 2 minutes each. So welcome to our presidential candidates, Jacob Akopnik and Jonathan Haque. Welcome, guys. Thank you for being here. So we're going to begin with opening statements, and you both will have 2 minutes to complete those statements. So we're going to begin with Jacob. You may begin your opening statement.
All right, can you hear me? Hello? Good? Okay, awesome. All right, good morning, Matadors. My name is Jacob Akopnik. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a political science major with a minor in urban studies and planning, and I'm running alongside Rise Above and my vice president, Kayla Simpkins, to be your next AS president. Now, I've been pretty involved around campus with more than 10 different organizations, including AS, since the beginning of my CSUN career. And I can go on and on about my own experiences, but that's not what we're here to do today, is it? Instead, I want to focus on how we can truly help all of you as your primary advocates. Rather than just saying things that sound nice with zero meaning, that's what Rise Above is all about. Acknowledging all the different hardships that students have gone through, including our own, and coming together to rise above it. That doesn't mean we plan to reinvent the CSUN wheel. Rather, in our collective experience, our slate has learned that many of the ideas that most of us want already exist in some form. But here's the problem. Most of us have no clue how to access these opportunities. That's where our pillars come in. Inclusivity, outreach, and community. College life should not be confusing to navigate, and students deserve to be genuinely heard in every conversation about students, period. That's what myself, Kayla, and the rest of Rise Above want to work on, and why we created these pillars. Using the privilege of leadership that you give us through your vote, we will put into motion concrete goals that can actually be accomplished, and not just take on the role for, with lack of a better word, the clout. Now, acknowledging the fact that it truly does sound like every slate always says the same things, and you as students are probably wondering what makes Rise Above so different. Well, to put it simply, we know what we're doing, and we're already planning out how to achieve our goals. This slate was not just thrown together in a lackluster manner. Kayla and I actually got to know every one of these students and what they stand for through long one-on-one meetings, and I can confidently tell you that every single one of them is truly inspirational. Hopefully, you'll be able to feel the same way soon. Thank you, Evelyn, and thank you, Matadors.
Thank you, Jacob. We're going to be moving on to Jonathan. You may begin your opening statement.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you, Chair Jimenez and the entire Elections Committee for organizing this event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jonathan Haque, and I'm super excited to run to be your next AS president. Fellow Matadors, we're about to embark on a new chapter of CSUN history. Now more than ever, we need a president who actually understands every student's needs, understands what works and what needs to be fixed. As the business senator, I've learned a lot about myself. But more importantly, I've learned about you, about your needs, about your concerns. Hosting college-wide town halls, I've listened to incredible student success stories. However, I've also listened to tragic ones. What I realized while listening to those stories is that we, as your representatives, have completely failed to reach out and listen to you. I've come to realize that every student has a unique story, and your story is why I'm running to be your next president. Through our pillars of giving back, transparency, and community, I'm committed to ensuring your needs are met. Whether it is financially, socially, or mentally, you will have access to many resources, all at the grasp of your fingertips. AS has a lot to offer. However, we have failed to connect you to those programs. From day one, our administration will take action. We will host school-wide town halls, expand our book voucher program so your books are paid for, expand your mental health and basic need resources, create a mentorship program for freshmen and transfer students, and much, much more. At the end of the day, you're our boss, and your voice is the only voice that matters.
Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to now begin with the question portion of this debate. So we're going to begin with our first question, and that is for Jacob. If elected president, what would be the first thing you would like to accomplish and why?
I think first question is what do we want to do first? And the very first thing is getting those referrals in. We have about 20 to 30 different goals that all of our senators have come up with, including things like making free parking spots for basic needs places on campus, creating more culture nights. So those are ways that students can actually share their beautiful cultures and what they have, what they can show to the rest of the world. And those kinds of ideas are amazing. And I think we've heard those over and over. But the issue is that when we hear our presidential candidates always talking about these ideas, they never actually put in those referrals, or they don't put them in fast enough to actually get started to working on those. So what ends up happening is that when they finally put it in, the senators are already in elections mode because they put it in the spring semester. So now at that point, those promises that they made all the way back in elections aren't actually getting done. So our plan is to immediately jump into our administration and write all of those referrals as soon as we start. Because for those that don't know what a referral is, that's what gets the senators going. That's what gets the standing committees to actually start researching our subjects and researching how to actually get things done, rather than just doing all of these great ideas of town halls and culture nights, like I was saying earlier. It requires us to actually put in the work and not just stating that we're actually going to do it.
Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to move it on to, not Jonathan. Thank you, Jacob. I apologize. We're going to move it on to Jonathan. Thank you. It is your turn, Jonathan. If elected, what would be the first thing you would like to accomplish and why?
Yeah, thank you. Really, and the first thing that we have to understand is that with the time we get back onto campus, it's going to be right around fall, if not by spring. And the number one priority of our administration, and this is something that I've constantly mentioned, is that we want to make sure we're listening to students' voices. And what I want to do, and what Kaitlyn and I have come up with, is making sure that we're listening not just to administrators and them telling us, hey, what we're doing, this is what we need to do, this is what we shouldn't do. But this is about listening to students. What's worked? What's stuff that you think that you learned from online that you think we should keep? Or what are things that you thought were just drastic and we should never ever do again? The important idea here is its action is super, super important. And I've always lived by that. But it's also listening to our constituents and to the people who we actually serve. And I think that that's something, again, AS has just completely failed at, is that when they come and people come into power, we just say that, all right, cool, we're here doing our job, having a good time. But why aren't you listening to your students? Why aren't you actually hearing what they need? And something about what makes CSUM super unique is that every single student has a different story, as I mentioned before. And our first priority when we come into office is making sure we're listening to you. And that's going to be through either town hall, through AS Instagram Lives, and everything in that aspect. Our goal is to make sure we're listening to you and your needs that you come and you tell us you need. That's what we're going to address the first thing. This isn't about what we think we need to change. This is about what you think and what every student needs to change. And that's what we're going to bring to AS as soon as we come in.
Thank you, Jonathan. Would anyone like to rebuttal? Jacob? Yes.
Yeah, so it's nice to be able to say we want to listen to the students, and it's a great idea, and that's what we've been saying since day one. That's why we call ourselves the primary advocates. But the issue is we're not reaching out to them. That's why we can't listen to them, is because they don't know how to come talk to us. And yes, like we've both been saying, we both want town halls, and we can make that, but how do we actually get students to come and talk to us? How do we get students to actually listen to us? And I mean, I've been going around and actually going into these meetings, going into, like I said, 10 different organizations, different people's organizations as well, actually asking them what they want and actually getting in their face and saying, look, I'm here from this organization and I need to know what you want. And it's not doing town halls and doing all of that. It's nice, but students aren't going to come to those town halls because they don't even know they exist. It's at this point, our Senate meetings are open too, and they don't come because they don't even know how to do it. So it's, yes, listening to students is what we want to do, but we have to actually get out to them. As I said, one of our pillars is outreach, and that's what we want to do, is actually outreach to the students first rather than just waiting for them to talk to us.
Thank you, Jacob. Would anyone else like to rebuttal? Yes, Jonathan.
Absolutely. Well, a couple things to that. The first thing is, I'm not sure if my opponent has actually ever held a town hall before, but one thing that I've realized is actually town halls have been very successful. I've had students, and specifically in one instance, a student actually tell me, wow, it is super nice to know that we have people representing us. And to me, that shows two things. One, people do listen. People actually do come to the town halls. People actually have ideas that they want to mention to their senators. And what's failed is that other senators are not doing these things. So it's not necessarily like, oh, we're not doing it. We are doing it. In fact, I have done it. And I've done it not just as a senator, but I'm going to continue to doing that as a president. And I know for a fact that students do want to listen to that stuff. And I know you mentioned as well that your primary agenda is submitting referrals. But my question is, how are you going to be doing that if you're going to be listening to students? Is it about listening to the students or submitting referrals from an AS perspective? And I think, again, that you said was your number one priority. So I'm just curious to hear exactly how that's going to be your priority.
Thank you, Jonathan. 30 seconds for rebuttals now. Jacob, would you like to rebuttal?
Yes, please. So first of all, I did not say my primary initiative is going to be making those referrals. I said that that's how I'm going to get my work done. And although, yes, it's going to be what my senators have been asking for, those senators are students that either haven't been in AS already, or they want to see something new too. And they're student leaders. They're going to want to make new things. And so that's where we're listening to students, is by listening to them, because they are students too. On top of that, I know you said I haven't hosted a town hall, but that's not exactly true. I've helped multiple senators host their own town halls, and I've actually been to them as well. As Attorney General, I'm not really able to put myself out there like that, where I can host a town hall on my own, but I help in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. We're going to be moving on. Oh, wait. Jonathan, would you like to rebuttal? Yes.
Yeah, I would. Hosting a town hall is not exactly the same as being at a town hall. And I think that's super important as well. What a town hall is making sure you're actually hearing your students out. And I've mentioned this from the beginning, listening to not just your students and also communicating with your deans, associate deans. And that's something that I've done as senator. And I've seen much growth and much potential from that. And I think having senators actually learn how to do that, I think, is also the next step.
Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to moving on to the second question for the debate. And this one is for Jonathan. This year, CSUN has a new president, President Beck. Students have expressed their concerns about the need to diversify faculty. What are your thoughts on this, and what will you do to address the students' concerns?
Absolutely. And this is a great question, and something that Kaitlyn and I have discussed a lot. One of the things that, again, we really feel that is important is making sure that students are aware of our new president. I think that's something as well that a lot of students may just have heard of or know of, but not just hearing it, but actually being able to communicate with her and being able to communicate your needs and whatever concerns you may have. I know that another big issue has been with faculty, and I think diversifying faculty is super important. And I think that what we need to do is making sure we're training faculty properly and making sure we're probably scouting the right people. And I think that's something that's we've always, I think, lacked. And I think we need to make sure we're concerning from day one. And I think when we address those concerns, we will make sure that CSUN becomes a better place from that. And that's something that Kaitlyn and I are 100% in our entire slate are 100% entirely dedicated to making sure we're hearing our students and giving them that communication, that streamline to speak, not just with us, just AS presidents, but to our university presidents, to the provost, to the dean. Those are the people that really need to know where our students are at and what they're saying. And I think that's something we're going to be focused on from day one and making sure we're hearing your students' needs.
Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to be moving on to Jacob. It is your turn, Jacob. This year's season has a new president, President Beck. Students have expressed their concerns about the need to diversify faculty. What are your thoughts on this, and what will you do to address the students' concerns?
Right. I think it really sucks that we've had a president that looks the exact same as our very last one. And I mean, I've gotten to know Dr. Beck and I think she's great, but I also see how students want someone who looks like them to actually represent them. And I mean, in this case as well, in AS, we have two Jewish white guys running for president, and that kind of sucks as well. And I mean, acknowledging that, and similarly to what my opponent said, we really want to make sure that we're diversifying it everywhere, not just in faculty, but everywhere, including leadership positions and students as well. And it's also important to recognize the fact that the faculty isn't just coming from Dr. Beck. There's a lot of different portions, a lot of different bits and pieces to it. So you have to know who to actually talk to be able to diversify the faculty and administration. And on top of that as well, back 2 years ago when I was a senator, there was a point where every single dean, when there was multiple deans being interviewed for new positions and all of that, and they would actually invite us to those meetings to actually meet with those new deans, to actually interview them ourselves. And what I want to do is actually expand that and ask for the administration to allow us to actually start not just interviewing deans, but actually interviewing the associate deans, the professors, everything from the provost down, all of that. And I mean, as of right now, most of those positions are filled, but again, there's always room for improvement in diversifying. And I really think that you just have to know who to talk to and how to get there, because if you don't know how to get there, then it's just not going to happen.
Thank you, Jacob. Would anyone like to rebuttal? No rebuttals? Alrighty, we're going to be moving on to our third question of the night. And this one's going to Jacob. It has been a year since this pandemic, meaning it's been a year of virtual learning. Many students have expressed their struggles and their lack of access to proper resources. How will you use the multi-million-dollar AS budget to best support our student needs?
Sorry, I forgot I couldn't figure out how to unmute. That's all good. But yeah, I think the first thing is definitely figuring out what administrations, what organizations need some sort of help as well. I think what really needs to be addressed is the fact that students are paying $100 and we're acting as a middleman. AS is really just a middleman for taking some money and putting it somewhere else. If you look at it in that sort of way, you have to realize that we need to make sure we're actually, I mean, I know my opponent is probably going to say the same thing, but listening to our students as to what they need as well. I mean, I know we might want to bring up scholarships and book vouchers, is that student fees for student needs. And it really just makes no sense as to why we're making students pay for they're paying for another student when they probably need that money as well. And I think the main thing I would want to do with that is just, again, listening to students and listening to exactly which needs they want. Also just helping clubs and organizations as well, because that's usually where most of our money is going to anyway. And they're probably going to be needing help with outreach, and clubs and organizations are really what helps students to get involved and get to actually understand what CSUN is like, get the help they need. And yeah, I really just think it's important to be able to understand the fact that we shouldn't be acting as that middleman, but rather helping students actually understand how to use that money. And also on top of that, the Code of Finance really needs a lot of work, because I think that is not student friendly at all. The Code on Finance, if any student who's listening has actually read it, I highly doubt any of you have actually understood what it says. And I, as Attorney General, honestly, that's the one code that I would like to completely make easier to read, because most of them are a lot easier to read, but the Code on Finance, there's a lot of issues that it's just really hard to actually get students to understand where their money can go.
Thank you, Jacob. We're gonna be passing it on to Jonathan. It is your turn, Jonathan. It has been a year since the pandemic, and meaning it has been a year of learning virtually. Many students have expressed their struggles and lack of access to resources. How will you use the multi-million-dollar AS budget to best support our student needs?
Absolutely. And really, our pillar of giving back is all about that. I heard my competitor talk about You know, a lot of buzzwords, a lot of listening, hearing out students. I think that's important, and I think we both agree on that. But we're actually going to take action, and that's what our pillar is. The first thing we want to do is create a philanthropy fund. That fund is going to be for clubs and orgs and Greek life to access this money to use for charity events that they're going to be hosting. I know many clubs and orgs and Greek life who actually host charity events, and I believe that they should have access to special funding where they can get funded for many things that the Code of Finance doesn't allow them for, like food, like DJs, like apparel. A lot of those things they don't get funded. That's one thing we're going to do. Another thing we're going to do is expand our book voucher program. Right now, we have 10 scholarships available for students who can't pay for their books or materials. This past semester, the USU did something similar, where they paid for students' books and materials with their excess funds. And when asked how many people applied for that program, they had over 600 applicants. And that just clearly shows what we need to do from AS. We will expand our book voucher program from those 10 students who would be eligible to 500 students. And not only are we going to expand that, we're going to actually market that to make sure students know that they have that resource and that scholarship available for them. Our third thing we're going to do, we want to make sure we can find students jobs on campus, whether it's virtually or whether it's on campus. You know, a lot of students, unfortunately, they lost their jobs over COVID. And I know how that feels. And I want to make sure that as we transition back onto campus, students have clear access to know what jobs are available on campus, whether they want to do it virtually, whether they want to do it in person, what requirements do they need? All those questions on a simple form that students can easily access so they can get back on their feet financially. Another thing I want to do is making sure we're expanding our mental health and basic needs resources. We have so many resources, as I mentioned before. And one thing I want to make sure we're doing is that we're actually expanding those and letting students know we have those resources available for them.
Thank you very much. So would anyone like to rebuttal? Jacob, yes.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First thing, as someone who's in Greek life and who's actually gone through those philanthropies, I know this stuff already exists. I mean, it doesn't have to come from AS most of the time. And on top of that, Greek life just isn't coming to AS to get that money. There are times we will ask, but we're getting money through each other. It really just comes down to we're paying dues, and students are actually using that philanthropy to donate their money. They're not trying to get extra money from AS and then donate that stuff, because the whole point of the philanthropy is to actually donate that money to a good cause. On top of that, a lot of the things you're asking for are things that already exist. The only issue is they're not being published. Not that it's not being published, it's not being shared. And I know you kind of touched on it as well, but we shouldn't be trying to reinvent the wheel and wasting our time on reinventing the wheel when we should be actually putting our time into making sure that people know these things exist. On top of that, I think when it comes to the book voucher program and all of that, that sounds great. But again, that's student fees for student needs. I don't understand why we want to act as a middleman when we can just
Your time's up.
The money back. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Would anyone else like to rebuttal? Yes, Jonathan.
Yeah. Just so we understand, I mean, our jobs as representatives is to make sure our students' needs are heard. And I think that, I mean, you're talking about reinventing the wheel. I don't think our plan has nothing to do with that. And I think that what we're doing and what we're focused on is making sure students' needs are met and also heard. We don't want to have to wait, as you clearly stated. We take forever, apparently. AS doesn't do a great job of getting things done immediately. So why can't we have those resources available for them right away, which we want to do? It's clear that students need help with their books. It's clear that USU showed that. We had 600 applicants for that. How is AS only having 10 book vouchers available? We're going to expand it to have 500 available. That's what we're doing. We're focused on the students and not only having those resources available for them, but to ensure that they're able to be successful outside of the classroom.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jacob, 30 seconds to rebuttal.
Right. So as someone who's on the USU board right now, I know for a fact it worked well. I know. But again, what I mean by reinventing the wheel is that we're saying the same thing over and over, both of us right now, and we're yelling at each other for the same thing. But again, these things already exist and students just don't know about them. Yes, I would love to expand the book voucher, but how many students watching right now actually know what the book voucher is? I remember voting on that 2 years ago with you, and I did not see it flourish at all. I did not see anyone at all ask me about the book voucher ever. it really just comes down to outreach. This stuff already exists. There's no point in wasting our time and trying to reinvent things when we can just push it out more and actually tell students this exists and don't waste our time on recreating it.
Thank you, Jacob. Jonathan, 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Absolutely. The problem is, like, as a president, it's not about like marketing. We have a whole department for AS marketing. Yes, of course, that's important. Yes, of course, we need to make sure students are aware of that. And that's something that AS has failed at. And I think we will do that. But our jobs as student leaders, as president, as our vice presidents will also be. Our job is to make sure we're creating these new things, whether it's resources, whether it's programs. That's what AS is about. It's not about marketing. AS leadership is about making sure students are heard. And those actions that we take from what they've mentioned is what our job is. And I think that's what's important, not about marketing it and letting them know. While that is important, that's not our main job. Our main focus is the students and making sure we're creating programs for them.
Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to be moving on to our last question of this debate, of this portion of this debate, before we get into our VPs. So the next question is, Jonathan, this past summer, there were protests on campus in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. What will you do to make the Black and other BIPOC students' concerns heard? And what will make you stand out compared to our current and past administrations?
This is a great question that you brought up. And I know this is something that I've worked on heavily, and I know we've been working on heavily this past year through AS. My first thing is that I stand against all hate. There's absolutely no reason for hate. There's absolutely nothing that, we should be standing against whatever that is. And what I've done is passing a bill on condemning anti-Semitism. We're working right now on things where we're condemning anti-Asian hate, condemning white supremacy. All these things are super, super important. I've stood behind each and every one of those referrals that have come to AS. What's important is that we're also letting our students know that, hey, we're with you. And this administration has utterly failed at letting students know that we're with you. One AS Instagram post is not enough. One statement from the president is not enough. We need to make sure we're actually going out, hosting events, having safe spaces for people to talk about this information. That's what it's about. It's not about an email that says, hey, we stand with X group, we stand with Y group. We're with everyone. That's a given. That's something that AS has always stood for. But what's going to separate, and I think what separates myself and what we're going to do as an administration is making sure that we're actually taking serious action, that a referral isn't just enough. It's about, hey, we need to actually take action on these things. What are we going to do to ensure that this hate doesn't trickle onto our campus? And that's something that we're going to take seriously from when we take office. And we're going to make sure that we create those safe spaces for students to come and express their concerns and make sure we're hearing them and addressing them head on.
Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to be passing it on to Jacob. It is your turn.
Can you repeat the question real quick?
Yes, I'm gonna repeat it. Yes, of course. Jacob, it is your turn. This past summer, there were protests on campus in the support of the Black Lives Matter movement. What will you do to make the Black students and other BIPOC students' concerns heard? And also, what will you do to stand out compared to our current administration and past administrations when supporting our BIPOC students?
Right. So I think the first thing I want to state is the fact that I, along with other members of this administration, was actually at those protests. And I think we've really been talking about inclusivity a lot from my slate. And what we've really talked about is the fact that we love the fact that CSUN is diverse. And we have a huge majority population. And that's amazing, right? Everyone feels comfortable because everyone sees someone that looks like them. But that's not true. Because at the end of the day, that majority is still not being heard. They're not being included in these conversations. And a lot of the times they also even feel uncomfortable with the fact that their professors are saying things that just don't sound right at all. And instead of just saying like, we're gonna do a little more, we actually have some ideas, some things along with making more anti-bias training for professors. Because professors, I don't know if you hear how many times professors will say guys instead of saying y'all or something like that, but professors say some things that just shouldn't be said ever. And they should start actually thinking about what they're saying. They should start actually looking into their assignments more. On top of that, AB 1460, that it's been a conversation for years, and it's still kind of rough. I think that's something we really want to focus on as well as AB 1460, making sure that it's actually being implemented and actually coming in smoothly. I know here at CSUN we already kind of had it, but in a whole CSU system, it's struggling. It really is struggling. So making sure that AB 1460 is actually working out. Improve inclusivity trainings in general as well. I think we see a lot of like our Title IX trainings on our portal every semester. We have to take that. I can guarantee you, everyone watching this is probably they watched it the first time, and the second time they clicked through it. Those inclusivity trainings, those trainings that we go through, literally they're just trainings for students to get through. And because of that, we still see stuff happening. So actually creating inclusivity trainings that mean something, make them mean something. Don't just make them something that we can skim through and say we're done with it. And just also, we've heard from our students as well that there's a lot of, oh, thank you.
No worries. Thank you. We're going to be moving on to the rebuttal section. So would anyone like to rebuttal? Is there any rebuttals? Jacob, I saw your hand up. Yes, 1 minute for rebuttal.
Sorry, I'm lagging a little bit, but my apologies. I think it's not a rebuttal. I just want to add a little bit more to what I was stating. I just want to finish off by saying there has been a lot of talk about there being an inequitable amount of funding for different departments, especially departments of cultural specific departments, and think we need to really address that, as well as those cultural departments. A lot of the times they're not actually open to those cultures specifically. I'm white. I don't really, I can acknowledge the fact that I don't understand it so well, but talking to students who have actually experienced how those cultural centers work, there's a lot of the times they feel kind of excluded from their own cultures because of the fact that they're being pushed away from that. That's also something we really want to address as well in terms of inclusivity and the whole hate situation that we see today.
Thank you, Jacob. Would anyone else like to give a rebuttal? Nope. Alrighty, we're going to be moving on to our vice president debate. So thank you both for being here today. I'll be passing it on to the assistant chair of elections, Reema Haque.
Thank you, Evelyn. We are now going to be moving forward to the second portion of the debate, which is the vice president debate. Let's introduce the two vice presidents. First, we have Kaitlyn Orozco, who is running alongside Jonathan Haque on the slate Matadors Leading Forward. Next, we have Kayla Simpkins, who is running alongside Jacob Akopnik in the slate Rise Above. Thank you both for being here. This portion of the debate consists of two general questions regarding AS and CSUN directed only towards the vice presidential candidates. Just as a refresher, candidates will have two questions to answer the original question. Once everyone has answered the original question, candidates will be given a minute for rebuttals. Once everyone that wants a rebuttal has spoken, candidates will be given an additional 30 seconds for rebuttals. If you would like a rebuttal, candidates must unmute themselves and I will call on you. If you would like to not use the full time for any of these portions, you do not get to use that leftover time again. Only vice presidential candidates can do a rebuttal during this portion of the debate. Candidates, if you are not speaking, please be muted. The order in which the candidates are asked the original question will be randomized, so if you need me to repeat the question, please feel free to ask me again. We will now begin with opening statements. Candidates will be given 1 minute each to say their statements. So let's first welcome our vice presidential candidates, Kayla Simpkins and Kaitlyn Orozco. First, we will have Kaitlyn saying your opening statement. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kaitlyn Orozco, she, hers, and I'm running to be your next Associated Students Vice President. I'm a third-year majoring in speech and language pathology, and I'm a daughter of an immigrant family and a first-generation student. Currently, I'm a member of NISHLA, a tour guide for the University Ambassadors, and a sister of Kappa Kappa Gamma. I've acquired a number of different time management, speaking, and leadership skills throughout my time in these organizations and on campus. Johnny and I are ready and more than capable of making this campus a more inclusive and supportive environment for all Matadors attending so that way they can reach their fullest potential. Giving back, transparency, and support are the pillars that we have established that are centered around our students and our values that my slate and I are ready to uphold to better this community of future leaders. It would be an absolute honor to serve as your next vice president, and I promise that if elected, I will do everything in my power to address the concerns of every student on campus.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. Now we have Kayla Simpkins. You may now begin your opening statement.
Hey Matadors, my name is Kayla Simpkins, and I am running to be your next AS Vice President alongside Jacob Akopnik and our slate Rise Above. As a Matador, I have been able to be a part of many different organizations, build strong connections, and gain experience whether through jobs or volunteering. Our slate wants every current and future Matador to gain those experiences as well. If you're attending and paying for a university, you have every right to know that what your university has to offer. That is why Rise Above represents closing one door and opening a new one, leaving every challenge, every battle, every failure or mistake in the past and starting fresh. It is time to build a brand new and brighter CSUN community where current and future Matadors don't just see CSUN as a backup school, but instead walk out of it stronger, confident, and ready to take on any challenge in the world. I hope that you all get a better sense of who we are through this debate and cherish all of the goals that we have planned. In the end, your voice is the one that truly matters. It takes all of us to build an inclusive and supportive community, and that is why I hope you all connect with our slate. We will rise above. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. We will now begin our question portion of the debate. Question 1. Kayla, CSUN is a very diverse campus, and with the recent rise of hate crimes towards Asian Americans, what will you do to make them feel safe and welcomed on campus?
Well, I think the importance is first creating an environment where students feel like they can even address their needs. So I think many times we don't, as being someone as a woman of color, it's hard to even get into spaces where we feel like I am supported and people are actually listening to me. So I think we can do consistent town halls or just even meeting with students and showing that we're there for them and we want to listen and how we can improve their community. I think being in the unknown is the hard part, but working students to students. So even creating like a forum on the CSUN app, right? And students can talk to students and get comfortable and feel like we relate to you, we're understanding, and we kind of match up together.
Thank you, Kayla. Kaitlyn, it is now your turn. CSUN is a very diverse campus, and with the recent rise of hate crimes towards Asian Americans, what will you do to make them feel safe and welcomed on campus?
Thank you, Reema. That was a great question. I honestly think that there are so many things that we can do to improve ourselves and just being able to represent those underrepresented groups on campus, especially those who are of Asian American descent. I think that some things that we can highlight, I think town halls are absolutely amazing. Student feedback is something that we really want to strive of and really go off of from our slate, especially speaking off maybe going off of weeks where we can highlight those ethnicities, those different cultures. We really want to be able to show that people's voices and their ethnicities and backgrounds are heard, they are voiced, they are amplified. And I think that is the most important thing to do right now, is to be able to give power to those students who may not feel like they have it at this moment, because this should be a home where everyone feels empowered. And I think that CSUN is such a unique and amazing school and campus that we should be able to highlight those opportunities for our students. I think it's crucial that we amplify those voices, especially for those who are experiencing those kinds of difficulties right now in the world. And I know that we live in a really hard time and place, and being able to amplify those voices through Spirit Weeks, through funding, through going, having speakers that are of that background come through. So I think those are some of the ways that we can definitely help.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. Would anyone like to rebuttal? No rebuttals? Okay, let's move on to our second question. Kaitlyn, CSUN students are hesitant about going back to campus due to COVID-19. How will you support your president in ensuring that our campus is safe for our students?
Awesome question. Thank you so much. I definitely think that one of the most important things to do when transitioning back to campus in a safe way is to ask our students, what do you think we need? Whether it be hybrid classes, whether it be a certain maximum capacity in classrooms or buildings, we definitely have to look at that and make an effort and go through to help and listen to our students, because their comfort is our number one priority, especially because I know better than anyone that like there are times in these times it's really hard to feel that comfort, especially with those hate crimes going on, with the financial hardships. We definitely have to create an environment where these students feel like it's comfortable, because being at CSUN should be a home for all that are attending. And I think it is so important that we hit on those targets, especially because we need to be able to create a learning environment, because ultimately that is our goal, is to make these students become successful through their learning opportunities. And I've heard so many times that from sorority sisters, from fellow ambassadors that I have, that they feel that being on campus is something that we need to strive for. And that is exactly the direction that our slate is trying to take the upcoming year to do. And so doing so in a way where we can get student feedback where they feel safe enough to proceed onto campus in a fashion that is comfortable for them is one of our biggest things.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. Kayla, it is now your turn. CSUN students are hesitant about going back to campus due to COVID-19. How will you support your president in ensuring that our campus is safe for our students?
Well, I think first is just making sure that all students kind of feel supported through the transition. I think many times the problem is that students don't know about the opportunities and resources that are even on campus to feel supported. And that's where we kind of want to start. And that's where our pillar comes in about outreach. So we just want to make sure that every student knows the resources that are there. So the Oasis Center or counseling services or tutoring when stuck in a class, like even the dress department. I actually was a paraprofessional at dress, and I know exactly what they do to accommodate individuals who have a disability. And I think it's important that students know about them, but also feel safe to even walk into those spaces without being judged and feel included into every single space that they walk into. So I think transitioning is hard, just as much as some people are against getting the vaccine. But I think the most important part is just knowing that we are there to support them, and we're going to listen to them, and we're going to make sure that they have every resource that they need or they feel that they need. Because if you're paying for a university, you should know what your university has to offer.
Thank you, Kayla. Would anyone like to rebuttal? Kaitlyn, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Going off of that, I think those are all excellent points, Kayla. You absolutely hit it on the nail. But we also have to look at like outreach and being able to give the students like an opportunity to voice those opinions, whether it be through open office hours where we invite students and anyone to really come and talk to us as senators, as cabinet members, as people who are on the board, as perhaps like president and vice president, creating an open-ended opportunity for those students to be able to talk to us, to be able to establish just comfort for them. And I really think a way that we can do that is hosting those town halls, office hours, and then definitely an anonymous concern box where students can come, because maybe they don't feel comfortable showing their identity and who they are and being able to voice those because of fear of whatever the case may be. So definitely being able to keep that identity anonymous so that way they can have an opportunity to voice their opinion without any fear or any concern is something that we're going to strive to do in my slate.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. Any other rebuttals? Kayla.
I would just like to add that I do agree, and that is why currently as Associated Students Chief of Staff, my cabinet itself does hold office hours, and so do the senators with this administration. So we know the importance, and it is there. We are constantly meeting with students or getting emails involving students that feel maybe attacked by a professor, anything like that, and we're always opening our doors and listening privately. I think that's important. We can say to do things privately, which is very nice. But at the same time, when building a community, we want other students to be able to support other students and to feel included in all spaces, not always in a private. So we want them to be able to depend on other people and feel safe in all spaces, not just our space. And I think that's kind of building our pillar of community.
Thank you, Kayla. Are there any second rebuttals? Kaitlyn, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I think those are all fantastic. I think being able to provide those opportunities for our student is like one of the number one goals that we have, and we are trying to execute in such a professional manner and in a comfortable manner for those students. And that's where our pillar of transparency really comes in, because we want to be able to create an open area where our students are able to really have a comfort with us, have a comfort with really everyone on campus when it comes to faculty, workers, really anyone along those lines. And that's what we're really striving to do with that slate and with that pillar.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. Kayla.
I would just like to add that transparency is nice, but we always talk about transparency. Past administrations have talked about transparency and communicating with the students, but we need to do even more than that. We need to build a community where they actually feel safe to even speak up. Because as a woman of color, or as someone, or talking to people who have been underrepresented and being in that community, we see that they're not even comfortable to speak up, and that's the problem. Yeah, you can communicate, but at the same time, it's getting them into the rooms to actually even understand what's going on.
Thank you, Kayla. And with that, those are the 2 questions. We will be ending the vice presidential debate. Thank you both for being here today, and I will pass it back to Evelyn.
I apologize, I was muted. Thank you, Reema. Now we'll be moving on to the closing statements from the presidential candidates, and they will only be given 2 minutes each. So welcome back to our presidential candidates, Jacob Akopnik and Jonathan Haque. Jonathan, you may begin your closing statement.
Awesome. In my freshman year, I ran to be a senator. I lost. I was devastated. I walked to my car parked in the roof of G3 and cried. I told myself then and there that this wouldn't be the last time advocating for students. After being appointed as a finance committee member, I applied for a cabinet position. Yet again, I was denied. As I had promised myself before, I told myself, I'm not going to give up. A semester later, I was honored to finally be appointed as the business college senator. I did not take that position for granted. I worked closely with the business students and leaders. I listened to their concerns and got to work on them immediately. I consistently spoke with the dean, associate dean. I went to faculty meetings to ensure that they understood how we, students, were feeling. Now, I want to make sure every single student on our campus has the opportunity to have their voices heard. My persistence and tenacity that I had as a senator will continue as president. Your voice is the only voice that matters. This job is not about the money or the clout. It's about you. It's about how CSUN will look as we return from a worldwide pandemic. It's about making sure your needs are at the top of our priority list. In fact, although there are factors in this competition that unfortunately want to prevent me from doing so, if elected, I am committing a portion of my presidential salary back to student scholarships. Being in a fortunate situation where I have a financially stable job, I want to make sure I prioritize your needs over mine. The only way we can move forward is together. And together, we are Matadors leading forward.
Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to be passing it on to Jacob. Jacob, you may begin your closing statement.
Thank you. All right, so to end today's event, I would just like to say thank you, truly, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, CSUN. I was never the best student, nor was I ever confident enough to do much with my life before becoming a Matador. But here I am today, running to be president of CSUN AS. And that's something I never thought I could convince myself to do. But because of you, Matadors, I have been truly blessed and found myself. If it were not for you, I would not be here today. I would have never seen my own potential. I would have moved into the workforce as a shy kid that would have never had the nerve to speak up. But again, here I am, and here we are. I know for a fact Kayla would share the same sentiment I do. None of this would be possible without you. We truly hope that you will be able to feel the same way under our administration. Like I said at the beginning, this slate is truly filled with inspirational people. And it sucks that with our current circumstances, it's hard to introduce you to them. But if I could guarantee you anything, it's that Rise Above will not let you down. We will pass our sentiment forward to you. We will make sure you're included in conversations, that you know what opportunities are available for you, and that CSUN will truly feel like your second home. We should be here for more than just a piece of paper. We should be here to make a difference. We should be here to learn new skills. We should be here to find ourselves before we're thrown out into the world after college. Most of all, we should be here to rise above the hard circumstances that we have been given. We can't do our whole slate justice just by telling you what we see. You have to see it for yourself. If you want to get to know them, feel free to follow us over on Instagram at CSUN_riseabove, where they've been given a bit of their own personalities. And Matadors, we know it's been tough, and we know we're also burnt out by the world as it is. But together, we will rise above. Thank you once again for creating a space for us to become who we are and letting us lead you all to find yourselves as well. Vote Rise Above April 6th and 7th.
Thank you, Jacob. And thank you, Jonathan, for both being here today. And this is the end of our debate. I'll be moving on to announcements. Once again, thank you to all our candidates for being here today. It truly means a lot. I would also like to give a big thanks to our tech support team. Without any of you, this wouldn't have been possible. Also to my co-host, Assistant Chair of Elections, Reema Haque. Thank you for being here and for always supporting me. I greatly, greatly appreciate you. And lastly, thank you for everyone for coming out tonight. No, not tonight, this morning. Because without the Matadors, none of this would have been happening. So please, please, please don't forget to vote on April 6th and 7th. Check your CSUN emails for your ballots. And if you have any questions, please email me at chairofelections@csun, chairofelections@csunas.org. And then also you can check our website. It is www.csun.edu/as/elections. And on the bottom of the website, you can see a enter, submit question or comment section. So all comments, also questions are welcomed. That's it for this morning. Thank you everyone for being here today again.